For the historian, the simple statistic is often the most deceptive. The final tally for the top fighter ace of the Allied forces in the Second World War is 62 confirmed aerial victories. The name attached to that number is Ivan Kozhedub. To most, that fact alone defines him. But to stop there is to miss the entire story, and to misunderstand the very nature of air combat on the Eastern Front. Because Kozhedub's record isn't just a measure of skill, it is a testament to a specific, brutal calculus of survival, forged in the most intense aerial battle space in human history. Consider this. Kozhedub flew over 300 combat sorties, engaged in 120 air battles, and was never shot down. Not once. In a theater where the average life expectancy for a new pilot could be measured in weeks, and where entire air regiments could be wiped out and reformed within months, that longevity is more statistically improbable than the kill count itself. His story isn't one of innate, untouchable genius, but of a systematic, learned resilience. It's a case study in how a man operating within a vast, grinding machinery of war managed not just to excel but to endure, while so many others vanished from the sky. To understand how he did that is to look past the dogfights and into the methodology of survival under relentless pressure. His war did not begin in the air, but with a profound and nearly career-ending setback. Ivan Kozhedub entered the war in the late autumn of 1942, a graduate of an aviation school that had accelerated training to a dangerous degree to meet the catastrophic losses of 1941. He was assigned to the 240th Fighter Aviation Regiment, flying the LA-5. His first combat sortie was a disaster. He was bounced by Messerschmitts, took severe damage to his aircraft, and then, in a harrowing friendly fire incident, was nearly shot down by a pair of Soviet P-39s. He landed with a fuselage riddled by both German and Soviet cannon fire. The regiment commander grounded him. This period of enforced grounding, of watching others fly and die, was not punishment but preservation. It was here that Kozhedub began his real education. He was assigned to study the regiment's combat logs, to debrief every returning pilot, to memorize the silhouettes of enemy aircraft, and to understand the tactical patterns emerging from the chaos. He turned a moment of professional failure into a foundational study period. When he returned to the cockpit weeks later, he was not just a pilot. He was a student of the air war over his specific sector of the front. He had learned the first, brutal lesson. Courage was irrelevant without situational awareness. The sky was not an arena for heroes, but a three-dimensional puzzle of energy states, sun angles, and predictable enemy habits. Kozhedub's dominance was built on a rejection of individualist dogfighting in favor of disciplined teamwork. The popular image of the fighter ace is a lone hunter, a chivalrous knight of the sky. On the Eastern Front, this was a recipe for a quick death. The Luftwaffe pilots he faced were often veterans of hundreds of sorties, with superior individual aircraft performance in the early years. Kozhedub's regiment, and later the squadron he commanded, operated on a different principle. They perfected the slashing attack as a unit. His tactics were defined by patience, positioning, and a strict adherence to the capabilities of his aircraft. He would often climb to altitude, conserve fuel and energy, and wait for the right moment to dive on unsuspecting enemy formations, prioritizing the destruction of bombers or disrupting attack runs. He was a master of the single decisive pass. He would pour his fire into a target at close range, often inside 100 meters, break off, and reassess. He rarely engaged in turning dogfights that bled energy and exposed him. This was not a lack of aggression. It was a calculated economy of force. He understood that the objective was to degrade the enemy's ability to influence the ground battle, not to rack up a personal score in a swirling, unpredictable melee. This tactical discipline, drilled into his wingmen, created a multiplicative effect. A flight led by Kozhedub was more dangerous than the sum of its parts because it operated with a shared brain. The technology he wielded was not a superior weapon but a consistent tool he learned to exploit to its absolute limits. Kozhedub flew Lavochkin fighters for his entire combat career, the La-5 and, later on, the La-7. These were not the elegant high-altitude Spitfires or the technologically revolutionary P-51 Mustang. They were wooden airframes, built under desperate conditions with persistent flaws. Still, they were, supremely optimized for the war they had to fight. They were tough, with excellent low to medium altitude performance and a devastating armament of 2 or 3 nose-mounted cannons. Kozhedub's genius lay in his complete mastery of this specific toolset. He knew its exact climb rate, its optimal turning speeds, its weaknesses in a dive. He famously had the gun sight on his early La-5 removed, finding it obstructed his view, and instead used the entire aircraft's nose as a reference point, a detail that really speaks to an intimate physical relationship with the machine. He did not lament not having a better aircraft. He extracted every ounce of potential from the one he had. This is a critical lesson in preparedness. Profound expertise with reliable, understood equipment trumps superficial familiarity with superior, but unfamiliar, technology. In the chaos of combat, his aircraft was an extension of his own nervous system. His record includes an engagement that official Soviet history quietly erased for nearly half a century. In the final months of the war, in April 1945, Kozhedub encountered a lone, unidentified jet aircraft over the Oder River. He identified it as a German Mi-262, the revolutionary jet fighter. Displaying the same calm calculation, he waited as it made a wide banking turn after an attack run. Its speed bled off. He dove and shot it down. The pilot parachuted out and survived. Decades later, cross-referencing with German records, historians confirmed the aircraft was not an Mi-262. It was, in fact, an American P-51D Mustang, flown by a Lieutenant Joseph J.G. from the 375th Fighter Squadron, who had strayed far east of his assigned area. The Soviet High Command, unwilling to mar the record of their premier ace with a friendly fire incident against an ally, buried the report. Kozhedub himself only hinted at it in his memoirs. This incident is not a mark against his skill, but a stark illumination of the fog of war that even the most skilled cannot fully penetrate. It underscores that, in the final analysis, historical truth is often layered beneath ephemeral narratives, and that even the clearest tactical picture can be fundamentally wrong at the strategic level. Ivan Kozhedub's story endures not because he was the highest-scoring Allied ace, but because he represents a paradigm of sustained effectiveness under extreme constraints. He was not a flamboyant talent, but a systemic thinker in a cockpit. His lessons are not about aerial acrobatics, but about the foundations of survival in any high-stakes environment. The transformation of initial failure into deep study, the supremacy of disciplined teamwork over individual prowess, the total mastery of your available tools, and the acceptance that no amount of skill can eliminate the pervasive fog of conflict. To remember him is to remember that in warfare, and in survival, endurance is a higher form of victory than any single triumph. It is the quiet, consistent application of learned principle that, in the end, outlasts chaos. If you value this kind of grounded, in-depth analysis that looks beyond the statistics to the systems of survival, consider subscribing to War Machiner. Share this video with others who believe history is best understood in its full, unvarnished context.